Hi, I'm Don Postema, and I'm grateful to be here speaking with you today. In fact, I'm grateful to be anywhere. Not only because COVID-19 hasn't attacked me yet, but even more because on July 3, 1934, I almost died. That day of near death was the day of my rather difficult birth on a 103-degree day in Chicago on the south side. A doctor had used forceps to bring me into that hot Chicago day. And when I found that out many years later, I realized that I could have not existed. Since I found that out, I haven't been able to take my life for granted. And as I go through life, it's like unwrapping this wonderful gift, full of surprises. So I've harvested some of the many memories of my experiences and events for you, and reflected on some insights I've gleaned over the years. These vignettes of my life and thoughts I've called Unwrapping the Gift, Life as Surprise. One insight I gained was an awe about life, all of life. I have a sense of how precious and fragile this gift is, this divine gift. We've learned that very poignantly the last few months during this epidemic, this pandemic, haven't we? A second insight, I was already being prepared to accept the concept and experience that the struggle in the universe is between life and death. I believe that the struggle is not so much between evil and good, but between death-dealing forces and life-affirming forces. And once again, we're seeing that age-old conflict play itself out right before our eyes, in hospitals and in the streets of our present-day society. Death-dealing forces against life-affirming forces. I experienced that struggle when I was 7 years old. I was a rather sickly little kid. I had a heart murmur. I wasn't allowed to play outside during recess, and nor did I do any sports. Kids called me Puny Postema. They could only see me today. They'd maybe think differently. Doctors found out that I had infected tonsils, so they had to be removed. I was strapped to a table, hands and feet, and then I was given a kind of rubber mask for the ether that was over my face. Remember those? Well, it felt like being smothered, and I wouldn't have any of that. So I struggled and wiggled and got my feet and arms out of the straps, tore that ether mask off my face and threw it across the room, kicked the doctor in the stomach. My mother said that the doctor was furious and swore at me. So I found out rather early, people don't like it when you contend for life against what seems to be death, forces of death. And I found that confirmed over and over again in my life in my struggle with various social issues. And this is a third insight that I see still being reinforced every day, almost. Whenever you oppose the oppressors, the powers that be, you're in for trouble. I seem to have learned a lot as a little kid. Flannery O'Connor once said, "Anybody who has survived childhood has enough information about life to last him the rest of his days." Well, some of these early impressions have lasted me a lifetime. As I strolled around in the museum of my memories, my 12th year seems to be an important year. During that confinement, when I was 7 years old, my parents started me on piano lessons, and surprise, I liked them. The piano and I became friends. And by the age of 12, I was pretty accomplished, enough for a doting uncle to give me the complete score of the Tchaikovsky B-flat minor concerto as a birthday gift. I think I learned the first page. I do remember that around this time my mother challenged me to either practice or quit lessons. I decided to continue practicing and kept taking lessons until I left for college. I've cherished this gift all of my life. That doting uncle gave me another gift for my 12th birthday. 12 art lessons at the Art Institute of Chicago. So every Saturday morning, I took the train downtown for a 3-hour class for 12 weeks. Art has been important in my life ever since. And a 7th grade teacher took our class to the Art Institute one day, and I saw my first Vincent van Gogh painting. Ah, I've been fascinated by him until this very day. Another gift. Folks have asked me when I decided to become a clergyman. Well, one Sunday morning when I was 15, something the teacher said in the Sunday school class must have touched me deeply, because I went home from that class, and at Sunday dinner I said to my parents that I would like to become a minister. We were a lower middle class family that usually depended on family members who graduated from high school to go to work and bring home money to support the family. But my parents accepted the decision, and since that morning, my life took a different trajectory. My mother said she kind of knew about this already when I was rather small. My maternal grandfather stopped at our house one Sunday morning for a cup of coffee. It was after working outside on the midnight shift of the railroad. My mother invited him to come to church with us, and he said no, he really couldn't attend, looking like he did in all these old work clothes. But 5-year-old Donnie, quoting some scripture that he must have learned in Sunday school, said, "Man looketh on the outward appearance, but God looketh on the heart." There was a clergyman in the making. I attended Calvin College and took the required pre-seminary college courses. I continued my interest in music, singing in choirs. And one of the best gifts I received in college was a beautiful, wonderful woman I met in a choir when I was a freshman. She was a senior, so I was really fortunate to meet her before she graduated. Surprisingly, that woman became my wife. We got married when I graduated from college. I now had a companion to accompany me on my life's journey. I went to Calvin Theological Seminary, and Elaine taught grade school. I took many theological, biblical, language, ecclesiastical, and liturgical courses. But my artist and creativity got starved with all that intellectual, cognitive stuff. Elaine and I were pretty productive. We had 2 sons born during that 4 years in seminary. One day, during my senior year, a friend told me that instead of going to take a call to a church that was after graduation, he was hoping to get a Fulbright scholarship and study at the Vrije Universiteit in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. I was intrigued. I thought that going to the Netherlands would give me an opportunity to explore my Dutch heritage and continue my theological education from a different perspective. So I applied. And another surprise gift. I received the Fulbright and another grant. And in August 1960, we left on a All-American Line ship, the Rheindamm, for Amsterdam. Living and studying in a foreign country and traveling all over Europe was an eye-opening experience, an exciting time of challenges, questioning, and reshaping my attitudes and ideas. Observing my country, my church, my family, my ideas, my beliefs from a different perspective was enlightening. I grew up in a rather provincial, conservative, traditional family and church community. It provided a solid basis for the beginning of life. However, it also taught me to be rather prejudiced and certainly racist. You're not born a racist. You learn it from others. This is embarrassing to admit, but it's true. I also knew which religion and church was the right one, ours. Life was rather uncomplicated, unambiguous, and fixed. Being open to what we had never experienced or thought before confronted these earlier certainties and stimulated a lot of rethinking. It was there that I realized that one of the most spiritual, religious questions anyone could ask is, why? Why? My artist came alive in Amsterdam. Even though I was studying for a degree, I took oil painting lessons at an atelier on a canal near the Anne Frank House. I also had numerous opportunities to visit the Stedelijk, or the City Museum, and experience the stunning paintings of Vincent van Gogh that I had been admiring since I was 12 years old. After 2.5 years of study, I ended up with a doctorandus degree in pastoral psychology. By the way, we also had a beautiful blonde-haired, Dutch-looking daughter born to us. And we gained a lifelong passion for foreign travel. I was continually grateful for the opportunities that seemed to keep coming my way. And every time I said yes, new doors opened to fascinating experiences. The next surprise opportunity that came my way, just as I was finishing my degree in Amsterdam, was an invitation in 1963 to become the campus pastor at Campus Chapel at the University of Michigan. I accepted the invitation. I completed my studies, and we left Holland for Ann Arbor. So there I was, 29 years old, with a wife and 3 children, and at last, I had my first full-time adult job. What a relief for my mother, and I think for Elaine's mother too. And what a gift that has been, being able to enjoy 34 years of ministry at the University of Michigan. Living and working within the context of the university continued to the expansion of my mind, my heart, my experiences, the expansion of my consciousness. The 60s were turbulent years, you may remember. What's going on in our country right now reminds me so much of those stormy days in the 60s and 70s, except they're even exacerbated today. There were protests in the streets and on campus and in the classrooms about the Vietnam War. You know that the first teach-ins were held here at the University of Michigan. Students burning their draft cards, urging the university to stop doing military research. There were protests about racial inequality, U of M divestment from South Africa because of apartheid. There were protests about gay, lesbian, and feminist concern. And there was a search for religious meaning. What a time to be thrust into ministry. It was challenging to translate my faith, my beliefs, my worship, theology into words and images that were meaningful in the middle of this mess, that might engage the students in their search for meaning. I developed a ministry around asking hard questions within the church and outside of it, providing a fearless atmosphere for students to question without shame, encouraging them to search without fear, not to undermine their faith, but to enhance and strengthen it. I attempted to remain true to the solid foundation of our Christian tradition, yet also engaging contemporary issues. I was inspired to develop a vibrant theology, a viable ethic, an innovative liturgy and worship. I did a lot of counseling throughout my career, surprised that people would share their lives and their challenges and their joys. What a privilege to work with young people most of my career. They kept me vital and engaged. I continued to appreciate the preciousness and uniqueness of life of all people. I had a vision for students, for the people of the university, and the church for that matter. And that was people not only with degrees, but with insight. Not only informed people, but transformed people. Not only knowledgeable people, but wise people with ethical and spiritual depth. Not only people of faith and love, but also of hope. Not only people of the mind, but people with heart. People well versed in the art of living as mature, whole people with a sense of humility, integrity, compassion, justice, and peace. As some of us campus ministers and rabbis met regularly to reflect on how we could best minister within the university, we also met with presidents and deans and faculty to encourage, but also to challenge them. To provide a warm, safe, peaceful gathering place in the midst of the storms of academic life and personal stress, 4 Ann Arbor churches, including Campus Chapel, opened a coffee house ministry in 1965. I even got to name it, The Ark. It still exists today, far exceeding the wildest dreams of us founders, as a world-renowned venue dedicated to the enrichment of the human spirit through music. Much of the unrest and protest on the campus and in the city was around the Vietnam War. In February 1968, I joined with 2,500 people from the clergy and laymen concerned about Vietnam on a march in Washington, D.C. Martin Luther King Jr. led us in an awesome silent prayer at the Arlington National Cemetery, and then gave a stirring, controversial speech at a church connecting the war and civil rights. I experienced even more deeply the conflict between death-dealing attitudes and actions, and life-affirming ones that was happening during the war and in the country's racial injustice and inequality. This realization, plus all the racial unrest in Ann Arbor and on campus, really made me confront my own racism that I had been taught. It's taken a long time to root out racist attitudes from my mind and heart, as well as understand how embedded it is in white society and institutions. In 1969-70, our family, with now 4 children, traveled 2.5 months in a pop-up camper across the U.S. to Berkeley, California. That cured Elaine from camping for the rest of her life. I had a year-long sabbatical studying at various seminaries of the Graduate Theological Union. The focus was religion and higher education, hoping to enhance my ministry at the U of M. Well, if I thought Ann Arbor was tumultuous, Berkeley was even more, a real hotbed of protests against the war. Police and National Guards were patrolling the campus. It was quite an exciting place to be for a year. I was learning to interact with other people of faith from many different religious traditions. This cooperation was necessary for us to be taken seriously by the university as we engaged the administration and staff. I also observed many young people on campus were searching for meaningful spiritual experiences among many religious traditions. I decided to explore my own Christian tradition for a spirituality that might help these people and my own constituents in their search for a deeper relationship with the divine mystery. So, on another year-long sabbatical, 1979-80, I studied with a well-known spiritual teacher at Yale Divinity School, Father Henry Nouwen. From that study came a book entitled Space for God, Study and Practice of Spirituality and Prayer. I developed the spirituality of grace, gratitude, and compassion. And I found out that writing could be a real ministry. That book changed my life considerably. I was invited to lead retreats and conferences for a wide variety of Christian churches, clergy groups, and missionaries all around the U.S. and in many, many places around the world. I was so grateful that the campus chapel leadership allowed and even encouraged me to pursue this latitude in my ministry. I was also offered opportunities to teach at various theological seminaries. I used a meditative style of lecturing in which I would stop for contemplative reflection throughout the teaching. I also developed a theory of teaching influenced by Parker Palmer around the concept of befriending the subject as well as befriending the students and inviting them also to befriend the subject. As I searched my own tradition, I continued to broaden my interest in other religious traditions. In 1968, I had a 6-month sabbatical, my third. Lucky, huh? And that was a spiritual journey visiting Catholic monasteries, Hindu ashrams, houses of prayer, Buddhist temples, Protestant retreat centers all around the western area of the United States. During that journey, I was invited to become a member of a group of 14 spiritual leaders from various world religions called the Snowmass Interreligious Dialogue. For 23 years, I met with them once a year to explore the theory, practice, and personal experiences of spirituality and contemplation in those religious traditions. The contemplative life and practice became more and more important to me. I represented this group at 2 parliaments of the world's religions, where 7,000 people attended, one in Chicago and one in South Africa. That has taken me from those provincial, narrow, prejudiced beginnings in my youth. I was intrigued by Parker Palmer's concept of hospitality of strangers, even when that stranger is an idea. He calls that epistemological hospitality to strange ideas. I've spent years unwrapping the gifts that spiritual folks have revealed to me. I call what we do mutual illumination. I wrote a paper about this called Appreciating God's Gifts in Other Religious Faiths Without Losing Your Own. I got in quite a bit of trouble for that. One insight I gained about what is needed for interspiritual dialogue is commitment and openness. Commitment, so you bring some solid insights to the discussion. Openness, so you are ready to learn and receive gifts from others. While engaging all that was going on in society, I was also involved in efforts to challenge our denomination, to reflect on a theology and ethics of participation in war, face the issues of racial injustice, and of opening all the offices of the church, including the ministry, to women, as well as LGBTQ concerns. as I learned very early, opposing the powers even in the church is a long and difficult process and gets you into trouble. You need faith and hope to keep going. I retired early so I could continue teaching and leading retreats. Another surprising opportunity was being a Protestant minister on 17 Holland America Line cruises. We got to travel to places we never would have gone otherwise. Elaine continued to be a wonderful traveling companion on ships, as well as during our long life. I'm recording this on August 17, the date of our 64th wedding anniversary. I indicated earlier that we had 4 children, which meant we had another daughter born to us in Ann Arbor. Having a family certainly made me realize even more the preciousness of life. And another insight, the inexhaustible availability of love. We wondered whether we had enough love for each person that entered our family. First 4 children, then 12 grandchildren, then great-grandchildren. And surprise, we kept unwrapping the plenitude of love. And then spouses of our children. How gratifying. And since we have Black, biracial, and Japanese members in our family, all the racist talk and attitudes and actions that we observe rampant today, that perturbs our love. They're attacks on our family. Another surprise, we kept getting older. It sneaks up on you, doesn't it? We at last ended up here at Glacier Hills. We're so grateful for the friends that we've met here and for the beautiful grounds that provide respite in these trying times. There's still wonder and awe. I've been able to pursue art again. And we enjoyed music when it was provided by many concerts and recitals, as well as exercise classes. Our attitude of gratitude and openness to surprise makes every day an adventure, with fresh possibilities of joy each morning despite the vicissitudes of old age. I live with hope and humor in the middle of despair. Things are not simple, but the engagement with complexity and mystery is exhilarating. And so I end where I began, grateful that since I didn't die on July 3, 1934, I've been able to unwrap for you some of the life gifts I treasure, insights I've gained, finding surprises all along the way. One possible life. And since I'm still alive, I look forward each day to more gifts and surprises, more blessings that God might have in store for me and for us all. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Mm-hmm. 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 But now I see